Welcome everyone, and welcome to another wonderful day, to another beautiful podcast with myself and Ellie. Ellie, I'm not going to try and pretend. Please give me your surname because I was going to blag it, but I just thought to myself, no, I'm not going to do that to her name. So how do I pronounce your surname?
Well, my first name is Elle, just like the letter, and my last name is O'Flaherty, and it's a hard one, so of course I understand.
Oh my, I even got her first name wrong. Can you believe that? That's typical Eli, right? Typical Eli. Well, you know what? I'm just going to have a wonderful and a stunning conversation to make up for it all. So, Elle, let us start the journey with you by telling us what exactly do you do for a business, and then we'll go with the flow, and you never know what we're going to know.
That sounds great. Well, first, thanks for having me on. This is going to be really fun, I can tell. So I'm a professional speaker and I own a coaching business. And I'm based in Washington, D.C., but we coach people all over the world. My firm is called Interlace Solutions. And I'm trained, and my staff are as well, in 3 different areas of coaching. So that's executive coaching, career, and my favorite thing to talk about, ADHD coaching. And I do a lot of public speaking about all sorts of things having to do with any aspect of the professional life, but I especially love talking about ADHD. I'm also, of course, a member of the community, so I get it. And all of my ADHD coaches are as well. And my mission and the thing that really drives me in life is trying to reduce the stigma around ADHD and neurodivergence in general. We are just so stigmatized, and when people come to me for coaching, usually they have a lot of negative self-talk. There's a lot that's going on. So I'm really trying to help people understand their brains, learn ways to work with it instead of against it, and then, as I said, just really reduce the stigma.
Okay, so you do the executive side of it and the ADHD coaching. So you said obviously you help people with ADHD so understand how to handle it, but do you do it from a point of view, from a business point of view, how to handle their ADHD in business, or are we just talking about just their personal lives?
So my answer is yes. I'm hired by individuals and organizations, usually to start with the business or professional side of it. So talking about how their traits are impacting every day, anything that's challenging, like getting tasks completed or getting to meetings on time. It could be all sorts of things. Usually when I'm working with people, we'll also start working on how it's affecting them personally. I often work with people's spouses or partners, because having that support at home with someone who understands our brains and really respects it is huge. So my coaches and I do all aspects of working with people on those areas. And for the vast majority of people that I work with, they have been diagnosed or think they are going to get diagnosed. Maybe they're getting medication from a psychiatrist, or maybe not. But no one has taken the time to explain how our brains work and how they're different. And particularly, I always start out with clients talking about the amazing gifts and strengths that come with ADHD, which is something that almost nobody talks about to ADHD folks.
No, totally. And when it comes to the partners, that must be quite difficult to handle, because obviously you're dealing with 2 completely effective clients. One is the person with the ADHD, the other one isn't, or they may have ADHD, but their perception with their partner. How do you approach it from that point of view? Because obviously you have 2 completely situations going on there.
Yeah, well, it is different if both partners are neurodivergent, but in the case where folks are one ADHD person or an ADHDer, I work with a lot of ADHDers as well. Those are folks who are on the autism spectrum and also ADHD. My first goal when working with their partners is I have everyone come to a common session and I start giving some foundational knowledge about ADHD. Again, because people know some of the negative and challenging traits, but people tend not to recognize or understand the strengths. So I always start there, which really helps start building more respect for our brain type, especially for partners who are at a place of really extreme frustration with their ADHD partner. And so my goal is always to have people recognize the wonderful things they're getting out of their ADHD partner, and then figuring out where they need to work better together.
Okay.
And I'm not just in the business of changing the ADHD person or helping them to sort of conform to what their partner wants. Ideally, both couples are making certain changes and implementing tools and systems so they can meet in the middle. Because neither partner is, I mean, there's no right and wrong, right? We're just trying to find a place that works for them.
Of course, it's perception at the end of the day. It's just finding, as you say, a middle ground for them to just come across and be able to communicate properly. And I'm sure you've had your situations where some couples are easier to work with than others. But what I'm interested in, not many people have the skill set to be able to do that, because the perception of how to deal with a person that has obviously some mental issues in their life and some traumas, and then you've got an ADHD, they're completely different things. So how did you have the skill set? How did you come to that skill set to know how to advise ADHD people to deal with the situations in their life in a positive way? What happened? Take us back.
Great question. Well, I was, of course, diagnosed as an adult. When I was a child in the 1980s, at least in the United States, women couldn't get ADHD by and large, so I was safe. But when we did start getting diagnosed when I was an adult, I mean, first of all, I have lived experience. I've been through all of this, and I really understand that, which I think is really helpful. Then as far as my training and my background, the first 20 years of my career, I was a litigating attorney. And my focus is actually in World Trade Organization disputes. So not anything I'm working on now. But some of the skills that were transferable is some of my training in things like arbitration and negotiation, which I was doing tons of international negotiation, which it turns out is really, really helpful when you're working with couples. And once I started looking at coaching, I went a little nuts. This is not required for any coach, but I have 7 coaching certifications, and I spent years training.
Wow.
So my ADHD coaching certification was 2 years of training. And part of that was working with people and their partners. Executive coaching, the same. Sometimes I will help people not with their partners, but maybe with their supervisor or colleagues. And so I've been training on this for years and years. And that's where all of that background, both as an attorney and now as a coach, has come into play. And it's all been incredibly helpful.
Okay, so when it comes to you got diagnosed, there was a reason why you got diagnosed. What was the issue for you to think, I need to be diagnosed? So just take us back to what issue you were having and for you to think something's not quite right here.
Well, it's funny. I knew for a long time, for a long, long, long time that I had ADHD. It wasn't what issue caused me to realize, because I had known. It was more what gave me the gumption to go ahead and try to get diagnosed or to admit that, because a lot of people, because of the stereotype, they don't want to be part of this community, at least initially. So I had all the usual things. When I was in school, I could never complete the reading because it was just too boring, too challenging to me. But I have a really, really good memory, an auditory memory. So I did great in school because I could remember every single thing that the instructor had said. But I can't sit still very much. Like, I really like to interact with people. I have every classic trait of ADHD. And so I knew for a long time, I just really, like a lot of us, pushed back against being diagnosed because I didn't want to think there was something wrong with me. In the DSM-5, the way that they talk about ADHD, which I hate, is it's a mental illness, which I absolutely do not agree with. And so I think being diagnosed with a like mental illness is hard for anyone. Um, and that's why I'm really grateful that now I know so much more about it. And and I've come to my own conclusions, especially after understanding us and our community. Um, I'm also really pushing and talking to a lot of therapists and psychiatrists to question whether it should be a mental illness in the DSM-5 and whether the way it's described is actually accurate.
Okay, so it seems like the way you describe it, it's like you had a beautiful ride. You know, you accepted it, you embraced it, you saw your strengths, and you went with the flow. But it must have been a time in your childhood that things were difficult, awkward, people saw certain things, and it wasn't easy. Was that the case at all? Or, yeah. Okay, so just take us back as far as possible that you can remember with hindsight, because we've all got hindsight, right? And just start us from the beginning when you can remember where certain times were quite difficult, and we go from there.
Definitely. I should also say that where I am now, it was a long journey after my diagnosis. As part of ADHD coaching training, I was coached, which started making a huge difference. So I am very different than I was before I was diagnosed. But yeah, I absolutely had all the classic things that a lot of ADHD and I would say neurodivergent kids have. Like, you know, kids calling me weird, that's always a big one because we show up differently than neurotypical kids. One particular story that I love telling is this is in the 1980s in the American South, and my favorite color was black. I loved it. I thought it was really, really beautiful. And this was at a time when no one's favorite color was black, and it wasn't, you know, common in clothes and all that good stuff like it is now. So for Mother's Day, I made my mom this beautiful tissue paper flower that was entirely black. And so my teacher, of course, calls my mom, assuming that I have depression or something horrible is going on, and my mom had to explain, no, she just really likes black. And I just marched to the beat of my own drummer, and I luckily had parents who were completely fine with that and encouraged it. As a result, though, like, yeah, other kids treated me differently and definitely thought that I was weird. And then, you know, all the other things that pile on, right? Like, I was always doing my homework at the last minute, which then made me think that I was lazy and irresponsible and all the other negative self-talk, when really I just needed that urgency for my brain to kick in and actually get it done. So before I was diagnosed, I had such negative self-talk, and I did not trust myself that I could actually do things. And so, yeah, I think that's really typical of people in our community.
All right, so let's go with that one. So like you said, self-talk is quite negative, you know, negative from the point of view, I can't do this, I can't do that. What was the turning point when you thought to myself, look, let's move on? What happened within your life that thought, right, let's make a change?
Great question. Well, you know, I was seeing a therapist, and shout out to all the therapists. I love therapy. And she really gave me the courage to start accepting and facing some of the things that were going on, like ADHD. And once I did that, and I started my ADHD coach training, one thing that I think is hugely helpful and was hugely helpful for me was being part of the community and realizing what's normal for us. So all those negative thoughts in my head were really about things that are extremely normal for us. And then the more I learned about ADHD brains from people like Ned Hallowell and, you know, all sorts of some of these great researchers and scientists who are doing great things, and started realizing a lot of the strengths, and also a metaphor really helped me. And I share this with a lot of clients, so please forgive me, but I have to share it here. So I'm left-handed. And of course, 90% of the world is right-handed, and everything everywhere is built for right-handed people. Being left-handed or right-handed, it's neutral, right? It's not a good or a bad thing, it just is. But if you're left-handed, because you're in such a small minority, it means that you, like, this will be more difficult until you find the left-handed tool or the left-handed way of doing it. Like my beloved left-handed can opener. I think of it the same way as ADHD, right? Things are more difficult for us to do because we've been taught how to do them in a neurotypical way. But once we're taught how to do things in a way that works with our brain, suddenly everything becomes so much easier. So those are some of the things that really, really helped. And I guess most importantly, realizing that different isn't wrong.
Yeah, that's true. And we're all supposed to be different, right? I mean, wouldn't it be a boring world if we all did the same, said the same, walked the same? Oh my God. You know, and this is why I say to a lot of people, just when you're doing anything in life, anything that resonates with you, just you don't have to follow the pack. You got to do what makes you happy, what makes you comfortable, right? And it doesn't have to be with what the rest of the crowd is doing, more importantly. So, okay, so we got that situation. Now,
When do you like, can I note what you said? I love what you just said. It does take a lot of bravery, right?
Say again?
It takes a lot of bravery, though, to go up against the stream.
I tell you what, I come from a family where they're quite motivational. I luckily had a mother and a father who made it easy for me to accept not only other people in the way they were, because I was brought up, it doesn't matter what color you are or where you come from or what your background is. No one is better or worse than anywhere else, one and so on. So everyone is, there's no hierarchy. So I found that quite easy from that point of view. But you're right. For a lot of people, especially with a lot of my friends I've come across, it's very difficult to go against the stream, because when you're used to trying to fit into a crowd and you feel quite uncomfortable, it does take a huge amount of bravery. I was lucky. I just had the parents that said, look, you are who you are. You know, and you should accept everybody for who they are. And because I was armed with those tools, it wasn't so hard for me to accept. But there are certain things about me that I've just had to get over in the last year and a half, I must admit, and I had to be brave to do that. So yes, coming back to your question, there are things that you have to be brave to get over, and there's no two ways about it. And it is difficult. It can be difficult, right? But it does take bravery.
I'm curious, because obviously I am a white woman and you're a Black man, and it sounds like you go to the UK, is that right?
Yeah, I'm in the UK.
I'm curious if, because you were already walking the path of sort of, being a racial minority, and that you had some of that experience, I'm wondering if that helped you in being neurodivergent, or at least being brave about it.
I'll tell you what made it easy for me being different is I live in London. I was brought up in London, and we're in a very diverse society, massively so. So when I was growing up to my different schools, the area I lived in, etc., there was a mix from all people all over the world. So I think I really didn't think to myself there was a difference in black or white or etc., because a lot of my friends, a lot of the people I interacted with were a mixture of people. So, and because my parents had different types of friends, from all races, black, whites, rich, poor, whatever, to me it wasn't a big thing at all. So that really helped. But that's only because of the lifestyle I was living with my family set, plus living in London and the part of London I lived in. So saying that, I was very lucky. But saying that, maybe 5-10 miles away, if you lived in a certain part of London, you were segregated. There's certain parts of London where a lot of black people live, or a lot of Indian people, and that could be different for them. I just was very lucky, and I appreciate that luck. Or should I say luck? I was in great circumstances, I think I could say.
I love that. And I grew up outside Washington, D.C., so it's similarly very, very diverse. And there was an emphasis on making sure that everyone understands that all races are equal, and women and men are equal, and just things like. I wonder if one of the things that the ADHD community and certainly other neurodiverse communities are lacking is that same understanding. And I say this because I've noticed recently that there are more and more shows about, for instance, autism spectrum, which is great. And a lot of those shows show things in really positive light, like, oh gosh, of course now I'm forgetting the one, Young Sheldon, some of these other shows, and they help the viewers to understand what it's like from our perspective. But I haven't seen any shows or anything like that on ADHD. I think it's still very, very much a mystery. And so I wonder if some of the work that's been done in helping to foster equality and understanding for other, racial, gender, any other sort of group that is in a minority or has, had some negative perceptions, I wonder if that's what we're missing for the ADHD community. And I think that the autism community has done a really great job of getting it out there, what autism is about, and helping people to understand. But I don't think that my community has done as well. And I think that that might be one of the divides of why we aren't perceived as well. A study I saw recently showed that more than 90% of neurotypical people have either very or heightened negative perceptions of ADHD.
It's an interesting point of view, to be honest. And I suppose it just depends where your background is from, if your community is accepting, and so on, and also your environment, your immediate environment, which is obviously parents, cousins, etc., etc. And you're totally right. I suppose the support system is very important, because I've done many podcasts, and people's backgrounds are one extreme to another, and I've interviewed people where they didn't get the support, they struggled with their lives, they couldn't understand how to deal with it. But they've still got over adversity. They're still successful in business. And then there's other people that had everything perfectly aligned, and it worked perfectly fine, and they're still successful in business. And how I see life is, we're all going in the same destination, but the path you take is completely different. The journey is completely different. So, but in general, you're totally right. It's a lot of people can't get their head around a person being autistic because they're very different. Just like, the color when you were younger, they don't quite understand. And it's very difficult for a community when they're not used to that color of, there's a better way for me to describe having that acceptance, being in a community where there is lots of different ways of people's cultures, way they do things, talk, religions, etc. And like I said, I was very lucky. I came across people completely different religions, and it was acceptable to have that conversation. There are many places in this world, including London. You can go in another place of London and it's not acceptable because you may have that segregation thing happening. So yeah, there's a lot going on. It's quite an interesting situation, actually. Yeah. You got me thinking.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I just, for me, because there was no understanding or acceptance of ADHD or even recognition that I had it, and for a lot of my clients too, when we're diagnosed, we go through this sort of grieving process, especially people who are diagnosed as adults, of thinking of what could have been. So we look back on our education, our performance at the professional performance, and most of my clients are sort of senior and executive level professionals who have done great things and have had these great careers, but they still tend to grieve, thinking how much better or easier it could have been if they had had these skills and sometimes the medication earlier in life. So Yeah, I think
No,
it's a really interesting question too.
no, I totally hear you. I mean, I'll give you a story with me. It was a situation that at the time when I was growing up, there was no such thing as being dyslexic or anything else. Or there was, but it wasn't really delved into. If you had a problem at school, it wasn't, could you be this or could you be that? And I grew up at a stage where I didn't have that support. Not until I went to college did I go for some support, and then I was told I was dyslexic, and then I found out some other things. Now, I could have done with that support when I was in secondary school, you know, when I was 11 upwards, but I didn't get that support. But at the same time, I didn't go to uni, and the reason being is because I thought, oh, I've got this problem. I can't this, and I can't do that. So arming yourself to say you've got a so-called problem, to some people, such as myself, it stopped me from going further, because I thought, there's no way I can do it. Because, and then other people, they could be armed with that information, and it's not going to stop me. I'm going to carry on. Again, it all comes down to your character, who you are, etc., etc. So yeah, so that's how it affected me. I'm a very intelligent person. I've got vast knowledge in many things and experience. If I get my hands on a piece of technology, I was a sound engineer, studio engineer. I deal with, I've done with servers, dealing with building systems, automation, AI. I can do all of that, and I'm very intelligent, but the paper thing always scared me. So, and this is why I wanted to do a podcast, to show people it doesn't matter what your so-called issue is. You can be successful regardless. What I tend to find is that when people have ADHD, autism, etc., they tend to be stronger leaders. And the reason being is because they've gone through so much inward turmoil, they've had to be independent and get on with it. And I think that's part of what gives us our strength as individuals and makes us stronger leaders in general. I'm not saying every single one of us, but it's in general, it makes us stronger from that point of view and have a more of an empathetic point of view, because we've had to so-called suffer. Well, we've had to suffer, and sometimes we've had to suffer in silence, haven't we? We've had to suffer in silence. So then when we get to the other side in the light, and we realize and we get the strength to do and get the courage, which is what you said earlier on before, when we get that strength and get that courage, then it's the situation we understand and have that empathy for other people like you in your business. The reason why you're so good in your business is because you had to live that. Someone could be taught to be able to help an ADHD person or a neurodivergent, but it's completely different when someone's had to live it. So straight away, they understand how to help a person from that point of view. And that's the way I see it. I don't know how you see it, Elle.
Everything you just said was so powerful. I appreciate you saying that, and I absolutely agree with you, especially about the empathy and connection with other people. Yes, I see that constantly in my clients for exactly the reasons that you said. One thing you touched on that is so important to me is you're talking about how learning that you were dyslexic kind of stopped your educational journey. And that is exactly why I like to start with people when they've been diagnosed with ADHD or, whatever, from a strengths-based place, to make sure they understand the amazing gifts that come with ADHD. And actually, I can't remember the details, so forgive me, but I just read an article about some of the strengths that they think that dyslexia confers, and they found some things that dyslexic people are particularly good at. And it's just like, if we started with kids by saying, hey, you have a different brain, but that is not bad, you have all these amazing gifts, and telling them, we're going to teach you tools, like you absolutely can do whatever you want to do, we'll just do it in a different way. And then Yeah, I think also teaching us, and this is everyone, no matter what kind of brain you have, to lean into your strengths.
That's
Too
right.
many of us will go into jobs that
Yep.
aren't really playing to our wheelhouse
Yep.
and we don't enjoy for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
And so making sure that we are really thinking critically about what we enjoy, what kind of a workplace we would enjoy, and importantly, because, most of my clients come from big cities with a lot of them with families who were white collar workers, and they have what I call prestige pressure, meaning both my parents were doctors, so I have to be a doctor or something that's, really prestigious. And sometimes we work through that, and my clients find out they're actually much happier in a different kind of occupation. I've had clients who have started their own businesses. I've had some of those businesses be not necessarily in the white collar realm. So some of them are doing, have businesses where they guide people through national parks or things like that, that are more to their ADHD strengths, where there may be more movement, or there could be lots of different things.
Yeah.
But these pressures that we face to achieve in a way that past generations have recognized achievement, I think that's really, really problematic, and it's a disservice for those of us who our brains are just a little different.
Yeah, and also what I want to take away from that is, it is a gift. I have to have acceptance, and I say this to a lot of my clients, because a lot of my clients are neurodivergent. And it is a gift to have what we have. The problem is, I suppose that society says you must be built a certain way, think a certain way, etc., makes it feel like it's not. But it is a gift that what we have, because I didn't realize the last few years ago that the gift I have, I'm able to listen to people's problems, be it personal problems, be it business problems, and find a solution very quickly and see patterns within things. And the reason why I can do that, because I'm not very good with the written side of things, but I'm stronger in other ways, because I've had to adapt to listen very well. Because my memory, I'm like a fish, right? My memory is terrible, but I've got to be able to see the body language of a person, exactly what they say and the way they said it. What they said before means a lot to me. So I can read between the lines very easily. Because of that, the majority of people don't have that skill set, because of that, I thought to myself, oh my God, I mean, you have a great skill set. You're great listening to friends. Friends love coming and talking with you. You're great in business because you can sit down, listen to a person's problem in business, and you've resolved the issue within 10 minutes because you can see a pattern. And sometimes I don't even see why that pattern is there. But I thought, oh, that's how to sort it out. And I'm thinking, well, how did I get to that? But it is correct. And I'm sure you find it when you have your clients, you look at them and you're thinking, wow, my God, look, what a good skill set. Do you not see that you can do A, B, and C? And you see this all the time in your client. And the majority of people will not have the skill set they have. And that's because they have ADHD, autism, dyslexia, etc. And we are supposed to be different. It is okay to be different. As you said before, you just need to find out your strengths, and you find a job or a way of being within your life that works with that strength. And then when you do that, you think, oh, life is totally fine. This is really good because I can do what nobody else can do. It's about acceptance. It is about acceptance, accepting who you are, writing down on a piece of paper what your weaknesses and your strengths are, and then going with your strengths, but also not negating your weaknesses, but not living the path of, oh, woe is me, all I am is negativity. You've got to get away from that. And that's my point of view. So this is what I say to my clients, even though I help them technically in their business, etc. But I also help them with their mindset, because the mindset within the business is very important before you go ahead and do anything else. So I always work on the person's mindset, whether they're ADHD or so-called normal. The mindset has to come before anything else. So yeah, see, you be careful, Ellie. You got me talking. When I'm talking, I take over. This is. I'm supposed to be interviewing you and not talking away. Otherwise, you're in trouble.
No, what you just said is gold. I want all my clients to listen to that. Well, all of our talk, but that part too, definitely. And you hit on something that's so interesting that I really find quite often. So ADHD folks are 300% more likely to be entrepreneurs because we have a higher tolerance for risk. We think way outside the box. We tend to be innovators. And so I tend to also, as you're saying, help a lot of folks start their business or, continue in their business, things like that. But one thing I've noticed across the board with my clients is, and this is all people, I think, but we tend to be acutely aware of our deficiencies and anything that's difficult for us. But our strengths are often really hard to identify. And one of the big reasons I've noticed for that is because people who are really good at something assume it's easy for everyone. And so one of the things I love doing early on is I have a series of questions I'll ask clients. Things like, what have you learned super fast in the past, or what do people come to you for advice? What's the topic? What are things that you've been recognized for? As well as asking, so if you have a partner or a best friend or someone, ask them, what do they see as your strengths? Because sometimes we need kind of that outside poking to really recognize what it is that we're amazing at, just because we don't get a chance to think that way very often.
Yeah, it's not only that, but our perceptions of us and the perceptions of other people from the outside looking in are two completely different things. And we may have a warped sense of perception of ourselves, which is very true. And not until you ask around can you then sit on the fence and think, oh, yeah, they could be right, or they could be wrong, whatever the case is. But the point is, the more you ask around, then the more that you can get a fuller picture of who you want to be, are, or going to be. I think that's the best way. Yeah, it's quite interesting. Ellie, you're getting us deep again.
Well, one other thing that I'll say that isn't quite as deep is having a list of your strengths. I also encourage my clients to keep track of their wins. Doesn't matter, but by reviewing your strengths and your wins pretty regularly, I often recommend people review their wins once a week. It can help tremendously with professional confidence because it helps you remember what you're amazing at and what you've achieved, and it also gives you confidence for the future because you've already done great things.
Okay, and so what about, that's the wins, but what about things that they haven't achieved? Do you recommend they also take that on board and see how they can go forward with that, or not? So, and why?
So for things that we haven't achieved, I think the first and most important question is, do we want to?
Okay.
So if we want to be, and I'm just pulling examples, but if we want to be better with our time and able to complete tasks, then yes, very likely we want to do that. Some of us have goals that we've just had without questioning them. And sometimes when I say, do you really want to do that? Especially now you have an interest-based brain. Is that interesting to you? And sometimes not. So I think making sure we start by reevaluating what we want to do. And as far as the things we want to get done, like I have some clients who I have one right now who's working on this amazing business that could really change a lot of people's lives. And this person is very driven. It's an important mission. And so now we say, okay, well, what's making it hard to do this? And so some of the typical ADHD things are motivation and focus, prioritization, time blindness, being able to complete tasks, all sorts of things, as well as future planning. And so we will take each of those incrementally and start working on them. Things like just approaching things in a different way, adding interest, which again whereas neurotypical people's brains are importance-based. So when they look at a to-do list, if it's important to them, to their partner, to their boss, then when they check, they'll want to do it, and when they check it off, they get a little dopamine hit. we don't have that. Our brain is entirely interest-based.
Mm.
And so the most interesting thing is the thing that we want more motivated to do. So I teach them things like how to add interest so that they will be able to get the things done that they really need and want to get done. So I don't limit people's goals. I mean, the whole point of being a coach basically is to help people set goals and get there. But I think anything is possible. The most important thing is believing them and really helping my clients to follow their interest.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, when I've got my clients, I work with frameworks. So what I do is I get them to fill out what their end goal is first of all, and I work backwards. And then I will get a framework working for them, but I will only get them to go in a direction, as you said, with their interest. Because it's a situation they're not going to be consistent. They're not going to be focused, because I know what I'm like. You know, if I'm as much as people talk about the blueprint for being successful, that usually doesn't work. The reason why it's a blueprint for them, it's not a blueprint for you. So really, it's got to be a custom-made blueprint for the person. And what a lot of coaches do, they tend to take out this framework and they, like a checklist, just like in a podcast, right? You've been on many podcasts and they ask the same questions over and over and over again. That's okay. But it doesn't add for the dynamics of a great podcast. And it's the same thing when you're dealing with a client. You know, you're using a list that works supposedly for everyone, but everyone's completely different. Their business is completely different. The way they do things is completely different, and where they're headed is completely different. So how can you then put the same framework to the same person? So this is why it's really, really important to, yes, you're totally right. The goal has got to start, and then I start backwards, and then find out what their passion is, what they're likely to do and be consistent with, and then what they can't be consistent with. Then we either put a system in place where I automate it, use AI, or they get a human being virtual assistant. Can I say? Otherwise what happens is, yes, focus is lost. Just like me, I get bored very easy, and I think, this is doing my head in. So I try to alleviate what doesn't work for me, and I focus on the things I'm very good at. And I do the same thing for my clients. And the reason why I can do that, because I'm in their shoes, I know how they feel. So that's why it's very easy for us. You do the same thing for your client. You get them, right? So it's very easy for you to put something together. So
exactly.
Interesting.
I'm just thinking about how you describe other coaches helping folks in business with giving them a blueprint. But it also occurs to me, I can't imagine someone being effective to just impose over them.
Yeah.
Here's how you do things, go forth. Because how are they going to have any buy-in? They haven't helped to create this. They haven't tailored it themselves. They've had no say. I think one of the most important part of the coaching process is that I don't assume that I know better than the person, because they are the world-leading expert on their lives, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think through the process of talking things through and figuring out what works for them, that's how you get a lot more buy-in, and that's how you get people wanting to take actions because they're doing it for themselves, not because I said to.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, let them get their hands dirty so they do feel part of the process, but at the same time, they're guiding you what's right for them.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So, as much as we feel them and we understand them to a certain point, because remember, everyone's an individual, everyone's going through their own journey, but by having that empathy we have for them, but we need their guidance because obviously they know where they're coming from, which is from a completely different point of view because they live in their own journey. So, and that's, now we're having this conversation. This is why I love working with people that are divergent, because I love people are like puzzles to me, and I like seeing the puzzles and putting them together. It's far more, because I'll be honest, I get bored very easy in life. And if I'm not being challenged, if I'm not seeing something different and I have to work it out, then I get bored. So I have to have clients that I have to work out, and be challenged for them to be successful. So yeah. So I think they're giving me a bit of therapy at the same time while I have them as clients, which I didn't think. Thank you for having this conversation. I didn't even think of it from that point of view, but I think I get a little bit of therapy every time I have a client, because I have to, by working them out, I'm working myself out at the same time, I think.
I learn from every client. There's so much. I mean, and it sounds like you approach coaching the same way I do, where I always approach it with curiosity. And I think when we approach people with curiosity,
that's right,
they will start teaching the things that they have to teach us. But I absolutely agree with you. I can't begin to think how much I've learned from all my clients.
Yeah, exactly. And this is exactly how I do the podcast. I'm sure listeners, and I've said it once before, I'm sure. The way I approach these podcasts, I know nothing of the person I'm interviewing. It's quite cheeky, actually, and it must be quite offensive. So when I speak to them before I come on, it's a situation I said, I really know nothing of you. I really don't know your background, but it's because of blah, 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 blah. But I work best that way because I'm a very curious, investigative type of person, knowing I work best flowing, and that's my strength. I go with my strength. I had one before I started the podcast. No, before I started the podcast, I was given a blueprint, right? You must do that. The quality must be this. This must be said. You must have a list, etc. I thought to myself, what do people want to hear? They want to hear a conversation to find solution. They want to hear a good conversation. And I'm very good at conversation. They're not really bothered with a 4K definition video, super sharp, this, that, and the other. So I thought to myself, I'm going to do it myself. I'm just going to have a conversation, and that's how I'm going to go. So this is why it's very important in life, listeners, to do things what resonates with you. Because remember, by you being unique, especially in this day and age, I should say, with AI, trust me, things are going to become very mundane with AI. And as much as it's a talking point right now, you're going to be able to tell AI when you're reading something or when you're watching something from a mile off, and you're going to have to be unique. Be that from a personal point of view or from a business point of view, because you're going to have to stand out. So you might as well, from now on, try to be yourself and accept yourself for who you are, and don't try and be anyone else. Just look at your strengths, go with the flow, do what you do best, make your mistakes, and become better. Elle?
I think the nice thing is we as neurodivergent people have a head start, right? We're already different. It's great.
There you go. There you go. There you go. And you know what? That is a word of gold. It's true. We are at a head start. And there's me all my life thinking, oh, woe is me. I can't do this. I can't do that. And you know what? It's so true. We are at a head start, aren't we? So, Ellie, I keep on calling you Ellie. It's Elle. So, Elle, I told you I've got a brain like a fish. Elle, what words of wisdom have you got for the listeners that we've missed out?
Well, I talk about how I coach with curiosity. I really encourage people to approach themselves with curiosity and kindness, and as much as possible, just to notice things that we're great at, things that are really challenging, and try to just set down judgment. We judge ourselves so much more harshly than we would ever judge another person, let alone someone we love. And so by being kinder to ourselves and helping ourselves to be the best we can be in a way that's maybe a little lighter, and maybe we have some humor in it, and we give ourselves more grace, I think that can really be helpful in our journey and in our self-acceptance, and also coming to love our neurodivergence and other parts of ourselves.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. And with that said, unfortunately, Ellie, I keep on saying Ellie, Elle. Unfortunately, we'll have to put a line in the sand. But before we go, how do people contact you to be able to get the support they need from you, or just to answer some questions?
Thank you for asking. My website is www.interlacesolutions.com. And on there, you'll see that I have an easy button you can click to schedule a consultation if you'd like to talk about coaching. I'm actually, this coming week, I'm launching a new course that is a complete guide to job search for people with ADHD brains. And also, I have a speaking page. So any organizations or events that you might be a part of and you'd like to have someone come speak about all aspects, frankly, of professionalism, leadership, and also ADHD, I would be delighted to come talk to folks. And October is actually ADHD Awareness Month, so it's a good excuse to chat about it some more.
Okay, cool. So, as always, listeners, down below you'll find all the details. Click away, contact her. She's a beautiful person to contact and do a one-to-one with. And me, for one, I've enjoyed the time with her. And hopefully we may have another podcast with her sometime in the future, because I'm still curious. It's just that we've run out of time. So, Elle, thank you for being on there. I really do appreciate the time you've given us.
Thank you, too. This conversation was just a delight.
And in the meantime, listeners, sayonara.